I'm here with Stuart James of Berkeley Centre for Independent Living, and Stuart's going to talk a lot about Berkeley and what he's doing with Berkeley. So I'm going to hand you over to Stuart, and Stuart, if you'd just like to tell us how things are going with you in Berkeley.
They're going great. I'm fairly new myself to the disability movement. Although I've had a disability since I was born, I just didn't really participate in the community. And I spent the first 25 years of my life working in professional sports marketing, and the last 10 in Asia. So it's been a little bit of a transition. I had some different ideas about disability and what needed to be done in terms of messaging and how we approach disability. And so now I've been here about 2 years, and we're finally getting on track.
Okay. And what's your role there, Stuart?
I'm the executive director. And this is the center, just so you're aware, this center in Berkeley is the first of the independent living centers. It's where the philosophy originated.
Right.
There are now more than 300 centers across the country, and there are hundreds more around the world, and almost every continent.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit more about the programs that you do there in Berkeley?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell me a little bit more about the programs that the Centre for Independent Living do?
Sure. All independent living centers are federally funded, so there are some core programs that we have to offer as a part of our grant. And they're very broad in their definition. So how we implement them depends on whichever independent living center you go to. But of the four, we have to offer peer counseling, which means we have to have people here with disabilities to sort of mentor other people with disabilities on how to get their life going.
Yeah.
We have to teach independent living skills. So for folks, it could be something like money management. It might be how to balance your checkbook. It could be simple things or much more complex.
Yeah.
We have to do transition services, which means we have to help people in nursing homes or people who may be institutionalized get out.
Right.
That tends to be difficult here in Berkeley because of the cost of living and the housing issue.
Yeah, tell me about living in the Bay Area. Yeah.
And then we have to offer personal attendant services in terms of how we help people get their personal attendant. And those are the four core services, and how you implement them depends on the independent living center you are part of.
Okay.
And then separate of that, any independent living center, depending on their funding, can create niche programs to help whatever issues may arise in their community.
Right.
We're very particularly focused on youth, and we are particularly focused here on employment. And the reason is we tend to think that if we can change the conversation kids have about their disabilities, or kids without disabilities have about disability, we can change the sort of paradigm that exists later in life for those folks.
Yeah.
And then the employment, because money's power. If you have money, you can make things happen. And you get money by having a job.
Right.
And I think that we found some holes in how the disability community were trying to attack the employment problem. There's a lot of focus on cognitive disabilities. There was a lot of focus on supported employment.
Right.
And that's fine, and it's necessary. But it left this group of folks, like folks with spinal cord injuries, who may be well-educated, who have the potential to have real career jobs that don't need supported employment, but have, in some cases, put up mental hurdles on their own.
Right.
Whether they think they can get a job, whether they think someone will employ them.
Right.
That has created this sort of barrier. And also, when we talk to employers, they get the disability equation jumbled up.
Right.
So there's so much conversation about supported employment, about kids or people with cognitive disabilities or folks who may need a lot of assistance in the workforce, and a lot of employers sort of assume that applies to everybody in the disability community,
Right.
And that's not helpful. So we try to educate employers on the differences.
Right.
Our employment program right now is very specifically focused on kids with college educations.
Okay.
Kids and adults with college educations.
Yeah.
We were a little bit startled to see a federal survey that came out. It was a study that came out early last year that said only 24% of college students who graduate are actually even looking for a job.
Right.
So they go to college and they think that's the last step before they go on Social Security. Because too many people are telling them that Social Security is the future. So they sort of go to college because it's what they can control.
Right.
And then they get out of college and they just sort of don't try. So we created an employment program that was specifically geared to address that issue.
Okay, cool.
Part of it is we teach those kids how to develop a personal brand. We teach them how to build a network.
Right.
Because I do think that fundamentally the traditional path to employment there's discrimination, right? You go to HR, and HR, my joke that I tell people is my wife's an HR executive. She married me, but she wouldn't hire me. And it's because her function as an HR person is to protect management. She's supposed to bring in candidates who are going to be most productive to those managers and cause, really, and the reality of it is, the least amount of trouble.
Yeah.
And she's not educated on disability. She doesn't understand a person who has a spinal cord injury from being blind, from being a conduct. She can't sort of figure out what the parameters are going to be.
So, Stuart, are you telling me you're a professional troublemaker?
Well, we're working on it. But we are, so it's easier for her to take it and put those folks to the side.
Yeah.
So what we try to do is we say, look, if you have a disability, your best path to employment is through a network that you build. I spent 25 years in sport marketing. I had a very successful career. I never wrote a resume.
Right.
I never wrote a resume because I always got my next job because it was offered from people I had already worked with.
Yeah.
Said, hey, we'd really like to have you over here. So I think we have to look at how we go about getting a job in a different way. And networking is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Building your personal brand is a big part of it.
Yeah.
And then the second part is we partnered with companies like Facebook, Google, Lyft, Truewire, and a whole bunch of others. And we literally take those kids who come through our program and we take them in there. And we do that and we tell them right off the bat that we're going to take you into Facebook. But there's no expectation that Facebook's going to hire you.
Right.
And we tell Facebook, we don't really care if you hire them or not. We don't want you to put any burden on them. What we want to do is we want to show these kids that your company is friendly to them. And that you really do want to hire them.
Yeah.
They're qualified. But mostly, we want you guys to get to know each other.
Right.
And we want you to see that all disability is not the same. And the folks that we're bringing in there may be different than what you think.
Right.
And this has worked. We've had a 75% success rate.
Cool.
We had one young lady go on to be a producer at CBS. We had another young lady directly from our program get a job at Google in accounting.
Yeah.
And it was all because, they got a chance to meet the manager and skip HR. And the manager said, I really like you.
Yeah.
And you want to be an accountant and I need an accountant. You want to come work here?
Yeah.
And I think that we need the cooperation of big business in America. We need to stop being adversarial.
Yeah.
We need to stop acting like they're the problem. There is a problem, but if we work together, we can get past it. And it's just educating people.
Yeah. Yeah, two of my very good friends who I've met through the spinal cord injury community both had spinal cord injuries and are very active in Google and making strong contributions in Google. So it's good to hear that being echoed as well. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Stuart, one of the things I was aware of other independent living centres do is adaptive technology. Maybe tell me a little bit about what you're doing at Berkeley regarding adaptive technology.
Well, I kind of missed that.
AT.
What?
AT.
AT. We love AT. We love AT.
Yeah.
I think people look at AT products in the wrong manner.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to look at them as sterile. They tend to look at them as very medically oriented.
Yeah.
And I think there's less focus on saying, hey, if we show you what an Amazon Echo can do to change your life, how it will unlock doors and turn lights on and do all sorts of stuff that you may otherwise struggle to do, and it applies to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So one of the things that we get stuck on, particularly with young people, is they don't like to be labeled with the D word.
Right.
Right? So we try to present all of our programs, and particularly in assistive technology, hey, look, this applies to everybody.
Right.
Right? We don't have one in my home, but we were at a hotel one day, my wife and I. My wife doesn't have a disability. Mm-hmm. And we were at a hotel one day and had a rolling shower. My wife came out of the shower and said it was the greatest shower she ever took because she had so much room.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It never occurred to her that she would actually, benefit.
Right.
The conversation needs to be broader, and we need to stop putting everybody in these boxes. Mm-hmm. This center is all about integration. So when we have a conversation about something, I'm talking to you and people in wheelchairs and people who are blind and people who whatever. I'm talking to everybody. Mm-hmm. Because everything we do applies to all of you.
Right.
So, yes. We are working on a program now. Hopefully we can get it funded. One of the problems we've discovered with AT is a lack of information about AT products, mm-hmm. a lack of independent information.
Right.
So, in other words, I go to buy something, even if it's a wheelchair or a specific product, and I can't find any independent reviews. It's all customer reviews, and often they're so specific to a disability they don't apply to me.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I can't tell whether this is just a well-made chair or not. Mm-hmm. So we are working to start a program called Power On, which will be an online TV program, which will independently review AT product.
Right.
In some cases, we'll compare products. Mm-hmm. In some cases, we'll just tell you what it does and whether we think it built well.
Yeah.
In some cases, it'll be low-end, like do-it-yourself home improvement products. Like, hey, that drawer may not be accessible. Let me show you what you can do for $5 to fix it.
Yeah.
And that type of thing. So we actually just shot the pilot for that program, mm-hmm. and now working on developing the funding.
Cool.
Yeah. Did that answer your question?
It did, Stuart. Thanks very much. It was very clear. Another thing maybe you can tell us about, specifically with individuals with spinal cord injury, what is the Centre for Independent Living could do for them, or any examples of people who have been utilising the capabilities of the Centre for Independent Living who have spinal cord injuries?
So what do we do?
Yeah.
Sorry? Well, basically, all our programs apply to folks with spinal cord injury. Mm-hmm. In theory, independent living centers are supposed to help people of any disability do anything. It's not really a practical approach because you can't be a jack of all trades.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think, and every center, to be clear, every center tends to operate. Well, in reality, every center tends to operate focused on whatever disability the ED has, usually.
Right.
We
get that.
So if the ED is blind, you'll see a lot of services for blind folks.
Yeah.
It's just sort of the way it's shaped out.
Yeah.
I think that, for us, and I don't have a spinal cord injury, but I do use a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of folks here who do have spinal cord injuries.
Yeah.
We have a very strong spinal cord network in the building. Mm-hmm. So we do relate to people with mobility issues.
Yeah.
I think because one of the focuses we have here at this center is that instead of trying to offer support services like sort of extensions of Social Security, which is what a lot of independent living centers have evolved into.
Right.
We've gotten away from that. And we really think that the next challenge in the disability community is changing people's hearts and minds about disability.
Yeah.
Changing the conversation about disability. Mm-hmm. And really, the people best apt to do that is the people in the spinal cord injury group.
Right.
So there is a focus in that space for us right now. Hence, we did the cross event.
Right.
A lot of the folks we deal with in employment come with spinal cord injuries. Mm-hmm. Because they're in college now or what have you. Yeah. We are working right now to try to develop a program very specific to Oakland because we found a lot of kids in Oakland get shot. Mm-hmm. There's a terrible gang violence problem in Oakland. Right. And about 30% of those kids end up with permanent disabilities, and a lot of them are spinal cord related. Right. And the trouble we have with those kids is that all the socioeconomic factors that led them down that path to begin with haven't changed. Right. They're still there. Mm-hmm. But they don't have a support network. Right. The vets are great, but they have a very good support network. Those guys help each other. Yeah. And these kids don't have that. Right. They're sort of on an island. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to work through programs specifically to help those kids. Right. And in fact, one of our ideas is trying to get the vets to come in and mentor. Mm-hmm. They're both sort of acquired their injury through violent means. Yeah. And maybe they have a similar sort of arc.
I understand. Yeah.
To get back to in their recovery.
Okay.
Yeah.
That answers my question, Stuart. That's really useful. Finally, what's next for the Centre for Independent Living? What would you like to? What's your ambitions? What programs would you like to see? Anything new on the horizon?
So, our focus and what we're really trying to do here at this centre is to change the conversation we have. People have, broader society has about disability. Mm-hmm. So we are trying to create programs that people of all abilities want a part of. Mm-hmm. So we've been inviting top chefs to come here and have cooking classes. Right. And we had Cal Peter now, who's the head chef at Chez Panisse, which is a Michelin star restaurant here in Berkeley. Mm-hmm. And we invite the entire community. Now, when he comes, we actually ask him to cater towards the disability community. So he talks about things about lowering tables or different assistive technology in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. But it's still him cooking, and it feels cool. And the community wants to participate regardless of the disability, and it no longer is a disability thing. Yeah. Yeah. And because of my background in sports, we're very sports related now. So we had the lacrosse clinic, and that was open to anybody who wanted to come play. You probably noticed that there were a bunch of guys there didn't need wheelchairs, but they're playing in wheelchairs. Yeah. We invite the Harlem Globetrotters to come every year and play wheelchair basketball with middle school kids. Mm-hmm. We're going to do a tennis clinic soon and get any, but we open it up to anybody that wants to come. Yeah. Because integration is both sides of the equation, right? I want people with disabilities to be able to integrate in mainstream society, but that kind of means they need to be able to come back and do disability-related things. Mm-hmm. Wheelchair basketball is fun. Whether you need a wheelchair or not, it's irrelevant. Yeah. And the wheelchair lacrosse, I think, was the same. People have fun. Mm-hmm. It's just a different sport. Yeah. And the same with go ball, and the same with other sports that may be in the Paralympics. So we're very much about trying to create integrated events that people sort of lose the disability label, but yet people with disabilities feel comfortable going. And that's sort of the focus. And we're trying to apply that to employment, and we're trying to apply that to just how we have a conversation. My big mantra is sort of, I don't want, there's a saying that, you should focus on what you can do and not what you can. Yeah. I think that's wrong. Mm-hmm. I think people should focus on what they want to do. Right. And the rest of it is we figure it out as we get there.
Okay, I'll write that down. We should focus on what we want to do.
Focus on what we want to do. Yeah. And don't worry about if you think you can do it or not. We'll find a way. That's what assistive technology is about.
Yeah.
Assistive technology is, okay, what do you want to do? Now let's figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah.
And stop putting up the mental hurdle.
Right.
Stop putting that fence up, because nobody knows what your limits are. You won't know it until you try.
Right. Got it.
So we got to get you out of that mode. And there's too many people in the community, whether it's doctors or spiritual leaders or teachers and unfortunately parents, who put up these fences around their kids or people with disabilities that are arbitrary. And they are a hurdle. And it's the easiest hurdle for us to remove.
Right. Okay, Stuart, I want to thank you for taking the time. It's actually been very informative and very inspirational just talking to you and listening your approach on making a big difference to the community, leading by example in some ways, and then giving other people the opportunity to go and do what they want to do and use their dreams. So again, Stuart, thank you very much for this information. If there's
thank you for having me.
If there's anything the Patterson Network Project could do to advertise any of your events or any of your outreach, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. But again, thank you very much.
Absolutely, no problem.
Cool.